What if your entire future could be dismantled by a single letter on a report card? For Malcolm Carter, a straight A student with dreams of attending Yale, an unexplainable F on his English final wasn't just a misstep, it was the first unraveling thread in a tightly woven net of injustice that had been quietly strangling his school for years. Malcolm's mother, Renee Carter, a single mom and night shift nurse, wasn't the type to sit back quietly. As they peeled back the layers of prejudice baked into the brick and mortar of Arlington Heights Preparatory, they discovered they weren't just fighting a teacher's personal bias, but something much older, colder, and more deeply rooted. At 16, Malcolm had an unshakable calm about him, the kind that only comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you're capable of. He was one of only a handful of black students at the elite private school tucked away in the suburbs. And while the tuition had taken sacrifices, he had never given anyone reason to doubt the investment. His 4.0 GPA, his national merit recognition, his leadership in debate and community service, these weren't just achievements. They were shields, his silent rebuttals to every raised eyebrow and whispered comment that followed him down the halls. He sat in Mrs. Edith Hallbrook's advanced literature class that day with confidence, one final essay away from securing his full scholarship to Yale. Mrs. Hallbrook, a strict, stone-faced instructor with a reputation for brilliance and rigidity, had taught at Arlington for nearly 30 years. She valued the canon, revered British literature, and prided herself on preparing students for the rigor of Ivy League life. Malcolm respected her, even if her praise for him was always conspicuously absent. That semester, he'd written an intricate literary analysis on Beloved, and his interpretation was not only sharp but deeply personal, melding historical context with contemporary reflection in a way that demonstrated depth well beyond his years. But Mrs. Hallbrook didn't see it that way. As she sat in her dimly lit office that evening, glasses perched low on her nose, red pen hovering over Malcolm's paper, she muttered aloud, "Too perfect." She circled complex points as if they were errors. Her annotations questioned tone, perspective, and objectivity, ignoring the fact that every line was supported by textual evidence. In her mind, no student, especially not this student, could write at that level without embellishment or external help. Subconsciously or not, she had already made up her mind. This wasn't about grammar. This wasn't about comprehension. This was about control. 2 days later, Malcolm sat for the final exam. It was comprehensive, weighted at 40% of the course grade, and he had studied meticulously. He'd outlined character arcs from Othello, broken down narrative symbolism in Morrison's work, and reviewed key critical essays until the pages felt like extensions of his own thoughts. That morning, his mother placed a fresh cup of coffee on his desk and kissed the top of his head. "You've already done the work," she said, exhaustion in her voice from another grueling hospital shift. "Just show them." Malcolm nodded, knowing that for students like him, excellence wasn't optional. It was the bare minimum. During the exam, Mrs. Hallbrook's presence lingered like a shadow. She paced the aisles slowly, her gaze often fixed behind Malcolm's shoulder, and at one point, she leaned close enough to whisper, "Your handwriting's slipping. I'd hate to deduct points for presentation." Malcolm's hand tightened on his pen. His handwriting, crisp and legible, was the product of years of obsessive attention to detail. The comment was deliberate, an attempt to rattle him. When the test was over, he handed it in with confidence. "I believe it meets the standard," he said, matching her cold smile with quiet assurance. What he didn't see was her tucking his paper to the very bottom of the pile, delaying its review until she'd established a stricter grading curve with the others. A week passed. Graduation loomed. College plans were already in motion. Malcolm, buoyed by the knowledge that he had aced the final, didn't check the grade portal until Marcus, his best friend, texted in a panic. "Check your grade." Now, confused, Malcolm logged in. English literature, F. His mind couldn't process it. The grade flashed like a siren on the screen. He clicked refresh. Still there. The drop in GPA was enough to disqualify him from his full-ride scholarship. His Yale acceptance might survive, but not the money. And without that, his dream might be over. Renee found her son staring blankly at his laptop. When he showed her the grade, her first reaction was disbelief, followed quickly by fury. "She failed you? After everything?" He nodded. "She said my interpretation was emotional, not scholarly." Renee stood. "We're going to the school. Tonight." Principal Theodore Carrington had always been cordial with the Carters, but his tone that evening was measured. "It's not customary to challenge a teacher's grade without formal appeal," he said. Renee stared him down. "Then let's make it formal." Mrs. Holbrook, when summoned, was unsurprised by their presence. Mr. Carter misunderstood key literary themes. His analysis lacked objectivity. When Malcolm asked to see his exam, she refused. "All final assessments are kept by the department. Standard policy." She smiled thinly. "Of course, you may file an appeal, though those take several weeks." She knew exactly what she was doing. Appeals wouldn't be processed until after scholarship decisions were finalized. The window was closing. Fast. That night, Renee began making calls. The next morning, she stood in Principal Carrington's office with a folder of Malcolm's past essays, standardized test scores, and a quiet rage that made even the seasoned administrator uneasy. "I want his exam reviewed by someone else," she said. "That would be irregular," Carrington replied. "Mrs. Holbrook is the department head. Then maybe the department needs a new head." A young teacher named M.S. Lillian Ortega overheard the meeting. She was new, progressive, and popular with students, but so far had remained silent in departmental politics. That evening, she reached out to Malcolm anonymously. "Meet me. I have something." In a quiet classroom, she handed him a folder. "These are departmental grading rubrics. Compare them to what Mrs. Holbrook uses in class." Malcolm and his friends, Marcus and Brielle, pored over the documents. The official rubric valued originality and textual support. Holbrook's notes, however, penalized creative interpretations unless they aligned with traditional readings. When Malcolm compared his essay to past a paper shared by Brielle's older sister, a pattern emerged. Students of color were marked down for the same approaches white students were praised for. Malcolm's mother presented the findings to Carrington, who agreed to a closed review. But it was clear to Renee, this wasn't one grade. It was a systemic issue. As more evidence mounted, including testimonies from former students and inconsistencies in grade distributions, pressure built. The school board was brought in. A meeting was called. Mrs. Holbrook arrived with a lawyer, but so did Renee with dozens of alumni, including an accomplished civil rights attorney who had nearly lost her scholarship to Columbia due to the same teacher. The boardroom couldn't contain the firestorm. M.S. Ortega presented the grading inconsistencies. Malcolm showed side-by-side comparisons of marked-up essays. Statistical analysis revealed a 30% lower average grade for Black and Hispanic students in Holbrook's classes. Still, some board members resisted. "This isn't about race," one said. "It's about maintaining academic integrity." Renee stood. "Then explain why my son, who aced the SAT and maintained a perfect GPA, failed a test he was fully prepared for. Explain why he's the 10th student of color we've found who had the same misunderstandings." Eventually, Principal Carrington, long silent, cleared his throat. "We've also uncovered handwritten notes from past years. Comments like not Westlake material and cultural bias evident. These weren't just grades. They were judgments." The room went quiet. Mrs. Holbrook stood. Her voice cracked, but not from remorse. "I upheld standards," she insisted. "Not everyone is ready for this level of academic rigor." Malcolm replied, calm and clear. "You weren't upholding standards. You were gatekeeping opportunity." The fallout was swift. The school board corrected Malcolm's grade and sent an official apology to Yale. Holbrook was placed on administrative leave pending termination. An independent review of past transcripts was launched, with plans to issue corrections where bias had clearly affected outcomes. M.S. Ortega was named interim department head and later appointed director of equity and inclusion. 3 months later, Malcolm stood on Yale's campus, scholarship intact. He had become more than a student wronged by a grade. He was now a voice for others who had endured silent injustice. His story had sparked media attention, leading to reviews at other schools and policy changes where before there was only complacency. Standing beside his mother under the ivy-covered arches, he looked ahead not just to lectures and textbooks, but to the work still left to do. And deep inside him, he knew justice wasn't just a grade corrected. It was a fight carried forward so that no other student would ever be silenced with a red pen.